Radio Free America. This is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Yeah, welcome everybody to our Daily Gun Show. Come to you live every weeknight, and we talk about guns for an hour or so. And I'm about to throw out a link here. Sorry about starting late. I was just over, I set everything up. And send out a link there if anybody wants to jump in, feel free. So this is a podcast. It's on episode 1123. We've been doing this for a while, and it's changed formats almost since day one. Right now, it is an attempt to be, or it's it's not an attempt. It is a room, a place for conversation. So we're under the weather, so running at about half steam here. But do the link out there if anybody does want to jump in. Feel free. I was offline here for a day, and like I said, I just kind of got sidetracked there. Only running at about half steam, and I saw the some of the stuff show up on my stream there, or my feed, I guess. So I was just watching videos. I didn't even realize that a bunch of people had showed up over here. So Walt jumped in.
What's going on, man?
Yeah, I'm just getting back up to speed, getting my energy levels back up again.
I hear that. I've been running ragged. We just started school, so I've been doing school with work, and yeah, just exhausted trying to get everything in the day. So I feel you.
Right on. So first off, I just wanted to start off today's show. Like, so there's other people that might jump in, but I really just want to take a second and tell everybody, it's easy to get caught up in all the shit that's going on. And obviously, this is a podcast, so this is something that people show up to divert some of their attention or to get informed or whatever your agenda might be. But don't forget about real life, and don't forget about those people out there, and appreciate what we got. I'll leave it at that. So anyway, I noticed you had a video up the other day with or talking about Hold My Guns. I didn't watch it yet, though. Like I said, I've kind of been out of it.
Oh yeah, so I just threw down my gambit. So I figured the killer play, and this is while I'm still working on finishing that book From Mothers to Demand Action, right, or From Moms to Demand Action. But I just figured, hey, they say they're about it. They say they're about preventing the actual problems of gun violence. Here's a whole bunch of reforms that, since they say that they want to protect the Second Amendment too, here's a whole bunch of reforms that don't touch the Second Amendment. So can we agree and work those? And the response, right, it's a debate trap, right? Because they will either A, see that they're inconsistent and that there are better paths to get what they're looking for, or B, they're going to have to demonstrate that they don't care about actually solving the problem, and that instead they think, that just restricting guns is superior as an option for some reason. So I like setting traps because they get people to think a little bit, which is why I just kind of made that. So that was just going through a lot of those statistics and stuff that we were talking about before.
I'll still watch it and then have more to say about it. But just when you're talking about that, made me think, so if we are in a place where we've got the gun prohibitionists, and some of them are they're all over the place, but they're going to suggest, like you just said, that they are still pro Second Amendment somehow. And if they're against the loss of life, and that's truly their goal, then then having these alternative things to go after things like suicide and go after things like accidents and awareness and education, if we can agree to work with them on that, let's say in whatever, just theoretical thought experiment or whatever, they go along with us on that. is that a good strategy? Do we want to collaborate with the prohibitionists? Do they get some sort of advantage on us, based on the whatever that would be, precedent?
Yeah, I think it is better always to collaborate when you can. So to quote my favorite of the Democrat presidential candidates, Tulsi Gabbard, right, who I believe she was quoting much wiser men than me, but you don't make peace with your friends, right? You make peace with your enemies. So the idea being that if we can understand their point of view, connect with them on a solution and be able to get something moving forward, it's like, like why wouldn't we? Like why wouldn't we get them out of the way of the Second Amendment? And why wouldn't we focus them on doing something positive in areas where maybe they're better equipped to do that? So like Mothers Demand Action is a really powerful organization for drawing resources and eyes and attention. I would think that it would be better to do it towards the right target, right? If they're focusing on the wrong thing, they're just wasting money and resources. So really, we're helping them by adjusting that focus. And in turn, they're also helping us, because if they get out of the way of these other things, then they can start to clear other obstacles. Like if they're concerned about mental health with gun owners, then they should be doing something to address stigma, or the stigma of gun owners getting mental health. They shouldn't be going about it how they are with just creating red flag laws. So there's alternative methods where they could be looking for better solutions that they just decide not to. If they knew better and if they were more willing to collaborate with us, and that's something where we just have to work on that relationship. I think it's possible. I've been having some good conversations offline with people. Actually, I have one guy who's opted to remain anonymous, but he's been getting really deep into the statistics and characterizations of things, and he's wanted to really go down the rabbit hole. That's a conversation I'm always willing to have. So I'm seeing that the content is starting to work. I'm starting to get that kind of response from it, where people are critically engaging it from not just my angle, not just like I'm a Californian who's kind of cool with guns or whatever, but it's people across the aisle, anti-gun all the way, that are like, wait a second, okay, let's talk about this. Oh, I do see there's nuance. I do see that I'm going to have to meet you somewhere. I do see that how the conversation is going right now isn't working, and I like what you're doing with it, even if I disagree with you. That's the type of response I'm seeing now. That's exactly what I'm shooting for.
Yeah, making them aware that they're set into an ambush, that they are being taken down an ambush point that goes against us. It's contrary to their own rights, and they don't know what their descendants might want, so it's against their descendants' rights, but they're being pushed down that without any offer of like alternative options. So I would think just for the person who's whatever, like honest about it, intellectually honest, is that the right word? Like the person who's honest about it is going to go, oh, okay, here's a way to get the goals accomplished and not have to go lockstep down this particular route, like this particular strategy, which takes us head to head with the NRA and whatever your perception is of gun owners when it's not necessary. I guess my original question, kind of devil's advocate thing there was, I agree. It seems as though by having some sort of, conversation with them, and then again, working together on things that don't infringe or that don't unnecessarily create, problems, gun prohibitionist type of stuff. But if we can address, like you say, the mental and the other issues, the safety issues, and actually I would think a lot of it is just educating them that by being so black and white, or whatever the word, cut and dry is with guns, where you won't even allow education in the schools, you're creating a situation where kids don't know what to do, right? We teach them about a hot pan in the kitchen. We don't expect something bad to happen, but anyway, we put a connotation on guns, and then you restrict it, and then you use that to further your agenda. That's got to be, people have to see that. When they see it that way, they would have to go, oh, wait a minute, yeah, we're being led down this path, but there's lots of things that go in this direction that aren't this particular path or strategy. Anyway, whenever we do all that, like I say, we're gonna strengthen their side. By working together, we're gonna strengthen their side. We're gonna give it more credibility and everything. And I guess the math would be how many people get educated that you don't need to mess with the Second Amendment and gun ownership, really. That's the key goal for what we're talking about. and that gun ownership, in fact, helps their side. So I guess the math would be how many people get educated to that and like understand, and then they can still be like anti whatever violence and death and stuff, but have something that they can do constructively to work towards it, leaving us alone. Or the other side would be that they just get so strong, large, accredited that then whenever they do just decide, well, let's go after ownership also, that what are we going to do? We just created a monster, and we've basically been promoting and helping it all the way up until the part that cuts our throats. That would be the worst case scenario.
Yeah, and to your credit, I think that skepticism and that doubt in their candor is well earned and justified through their reputation throughout the ages. So like in Shannon Watt's book, right, she talked about basically tricking a gun owner, a gun enthusiast who was, I believe, open carrying, wearing the shirt and all that for his local Second Amendment support group, basically, into holding Mothers Demand Action propaganda essentially for a photo, and then they put it up and they blasted it out. And she was proud of that opportunity, and she kind of bamboozled and hoodwinked this guy who was upset at what she was saying because he felt that a lot of it was inaccurate. And based on my understanding of her materials, frankly, most of them are inaccurate when she's trying to describe matters of fact. So we do know that there are undoubtedly opportunists out there who would seek to take advantage. I think the question is going to be, how can we make that obvious? How can we weed that out? How can we make sure that we're having dialogue with people who are interested in having it? First and foremost. So I would say when the silent majority of reasonable people that are kind of in between on issues, right? Like we look at our country, the majority of people aren't conservative, or the majority of people aren't liberal or super left, right, or whatever. They're somewhere in the middle. They're not they're somewhere in the middle on issues. So they're like, yeah, I could see why someone needs a gun, but maybe this, right? Or maybe there should be a law about this, or maybe universal background checks. I've heard that once. Then they go and they think that. I would rather engage those people, because like when I have conversations with those people, then they turn really productive on average. So if we can get those people engaged, but then we get this whole other problem with that too. So now we've engaged the silent majority in the center. Will they actually vote? Will they actually do something about it? Will they actually, and I think those problems are too much for any one person to just take on by themselves. I think we have to approach it incrementally. I can motivate and I can do all the content kind of explaining the arguments here, but I can't necessarily motivate everyone in the world to get out and vote their values. A lot of like what Second Amendment Foundation, right, is doing is just like, hey, we want you to know that this is on the ballot. Vote your values, and then people vote for 2A, right? They found that, so it's like, yeah, sometimes people need a little bit more handholding than that, but that's. I guess my point here is just that there's so many different aspects to the problem of having this conversation in a nuanced way. And I think we all just got to take like whatever we can, our little piece of it, and try to run it and get that handled.
Well, yeah, I think that last part, that's how we end up winning. You can have a large entity with a lot of resources, and it's very difficult for them to address. Well, it's easy for them to go head to head with any entity. Right, an NRA versus a Bloomberg, that's easy to pay for, easy to entertain a bunch of folks with. But if you've got a whole bunch of pro-rights people that are going after the thing from every different angle, well, right, or maybe not well everywhere, there's no law, but whatever, for the most part, everybody's going to be doing their thing. And just like this, if we can so you get a whole bunch of different people doing their thing, and then it's very difficult for an entity to address all of that. They'd have to first identify all the campaigns and then rank them on which ones are the most effective, and then somehow decide through some sort of process which ones are possible to affect, to turn off or to stifle, and then an effort at doing that. I mean, that'd take a heck of a lot of work. And if you create a system or a culture where people jump in and join and add their contribution to the thing, then it doesn't stay the same long enough for any of that stuff to work, the large entity to do their work. They'll be able to pick off the large, slow moving ones perhaps or something, but yeah, it would definitely it could change the game up with that.
Yeah, I think so. And I think like when we talk about it, it's going to be just getting it down to, like I said, getting it down to brass tacks. And I think probably the most effective thing we can do is just continue individual conversations. I'm very big on that grassroots approach. I think that's what a lot of people would characterize it as. You don't have to necessarily be out there handing out flyers to people. You don't have to be, whatever. But if you're talking to people that don't think like you, to me, I see that as a moral imperative. You have to get out there and talk to people that are just different than you, at least a little bit, and then see why they think the way that they do, and just talk and engage. And then if you can do that, show them your world a little bit. Eventually, invite them over for that shooting trip. Invite them out to the range, get them all trained on their gun safety, show them how much goes into it, get them out. Like that's the stuff we've seen time and time again flips these guys. The people on the left that are joining the gun crowd now, it's like it just keeps getting bigger and bigger as they see all of the unrest, everything else that's going on. Like there's people that this was completely foreign to. The idea of a firearm being acceptable or safe was completely foreign to them. And then now they're starting to see, oh, you know what? The police are not there for me all the time. I need to be able to handle my own business. Or the police don't always see things the way I do. And, maybe one day they'd come for me when they shouldn't. And I have no way of making sure I'm safe. So maybe I need to, really think about that tyranny aspect of the Second Amendment and practice the right. We're getting people who are sincere supporters of the Second Amendment. Like we got to be, making sure those messages are getting out for sure. So.
Yeah, and when somebody, I think the kind of person you're talking about will make the decision to buy a gun and then taking maybe even an extra step about saying something about it or getting involved with something, shooting or chatting about it or something. Yeah, that takes an effort or something. So it's sort of like when you go from phase changes from, or whatever it's called, when you go from like boiling water to gas, or when you go from frozen to liquid, you've got energy that's created or lost. There's potentials, right? So for someone to make that leap, that was a heck of a lot of, what do you want to call it? Like there was a lot of work being done there on their side. And I guess it's possible for some people to just be some sort of a mechanical thing, like, oh, a gun will protect me. If I have it, it's a talisman, I'm done. But I think there's more people that think about it more like, wait a minute, where do I live? I live in a country where it's legal for me to do this. And we live in 2020 where you just go on YouTube and type in gun videos and keep clicking next until you find the one that you like. And once you find the one that you like, that's the, non-crazy looking person that looks like you or that makes you feel comfortable and tells you stuff that you didn't know about, and it isn't kill, violence, gore, fetish bullshit that they think, right? Because they don't know. There's nothing over here there's very little over here like that. 14-year-olds or whatever are going to be 14-year-olds. But when they get over here and find something that's comfortable for them, yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of power there. And, well, I guess some of it is just mapping it out, letting them know what there is to do. And I guess those people that did buy it as a talisman, if they're going to look around at all, I mean, they're going to have to go buy ammo at some point. They might go to a range or something. This is the perfect time. Now, you kind of said you don't have to go out and hand out pamphlets or whatever, but this is a perfect time for somebody to come up with something like a colorful, attractive, eye-catching, I guess, half a sheet type of thing. They could put on a bulletin board at a range or at the gun shop or at a gun show, have it as a handout. Just have something that's half a sheet of paper so it's not expensive to print, and have these things available, and maybe talk about workshops or clinics or shooting events or something, that's in your area, so that you could have that piece of paper introduction. Somebody who goes to a gun shop or a gun range who's new, try to put yourself in their shoes. What are they going to do? They're just going to start walking around talking to everybody, or are they going to look around and shut up and get out of there? And if there's something there that says, hey, are you new and you need some help, need some direction or something, then it'd be the perfect time to have that kind of stuff or that kind of effort out there.
Yeah, and one of the big things that I see, especially people on the left looking for right now, is the gun shops where they feel particularly welcome. So they are avoiding a lot of those symbols. I know we talked about it previously, but they are actively avoiding things like Confederate flags, thin blue line. They're avoiding a lot of stuff that a lot of people in the gun community just kind of turn a blind eye to, or they see those symbols differently. So, like, I mean, I have enough friends in law enforcement. When I was serving, I had a bunch of my NCOs or fellow soldiers in law enforcement. It's like I get it. Thin blue line, all that stuff is talking about the stress and the pressure put on them. It's the separation between order and chaos, and it's held together by this right, the thin blue line, and that's it, right? And so there's a bond there. But then on the other side, the people that don't like that symbol, that have issues with cops, right? One of the things that they would go and say is, really, you're protecting the people on the other side of that thin blue line. Really, you're not about protecting me, you're about protecting your own if you stand behind the thin blue line. So they see that symbol just differently. If they see some gun stores have that symbol where they cater to law enforcement a lot, or where they say, if you don't support cops, don't buy here, things like that. Okay, bye, and then they're off looking for another place to take their business. So I think it's just about making sure that we find ways to make sure we can get out of the way. I'm not going to tell, and this is a reflection I had on our previous conversation. I'm not going to tell anybody to change their message. I'm just going to ask them to be maybe aware of what other people perceive their message as. So being just conscientious of what we put out there, the symbols we put out there, and what that means. I think that would be a relevant thing to do. At least it would be a wise thing to do.
Yeah, that stuff's going to change or evolve, I guess, because the flags with the line on it and all that crap, like you say, it originated from cops who, anybody who thinks that cops are all fucking the same are an idiot, right? Like everybody's different. So, but yeah, having a job where, I mean, there's very few jobs where your life is at risk, maybe all the time, but not really. And then you kind of have to always be ready to do horrible, violent stuff, but then really not that much. It's like you've got this start and stop, and nobody realizes it, or very few people, I think, put any attention towards that. And then at any moment, you can be put into a situation where your life and liberty, your family's security in the future are put at risk based on a decision you have to make in a moment. And sure, that can happen to anybody, but it happens, it's got to be some level of increase when you're a cop or whatever. So it's a crazy, crazy, crazy occupation. And that's something that people volunteer for, and they certainly don't make enough money to compensate for all that. They're doing it out of interest in helping each other. And yeah, when people are going to lump all things together and go after them, it becomes a this and them. Anyway, so I think it came from more of let's support each other with a subtle nod that we understand. And now, like you say, people are looking at that with, oh, you people are protecting each other. I hate you all. And that's a symbol of like, F you, right? To me, like that's you, the cops, saying F you to everybody else. And they're entitled to that position. What the hell, right? What the hell? But I think that's why it's going to become nuanced. There's going to be more than just that dumbass American flag with a blue line in it. I've never been a flag of that or been a fan of that shit. But that's just me and the flag. But
Yeah.
there's the putting the black like rubber band or whatever, the band around the badges when one of them gets hurt. And again, there's people that are looking at that in a whole different way. And that's,
Oh yeah.
it sucks, but what are you going to do? Things evolve and stuff. And as I say, there's going to be some nuance and some change to that. But I really don't think going forward, people really are going to think the police are the Gestapo or something. That's a fairly new effort. Like somebody is putting that out there, and it's catching, but it's not as though everyone's afraid of the police. My grandma wasn't cowering if the police pulled her over.
Yeah, and I'm not generally like my approach with police is pretty. I don't want to say it's entirely adversarial, especially in my area, because I'm not that way. But if I get pulled over, I do thoroughly believe in the say nothing approach. I'm not a lawyer, at least not yet. But that's what I do. If I get pulled over by a cop, I don't make small talk. I don't do anything. I say yes sir, no sir, and I give them what I'm required to, and I say respectfully, I prefer not to answer any questions, right? And I just say, something along those lines. I'm not going to answer questions. And so far that has resulted in a ticket I was able to get a lower fine for in court. So far that's worked. But I will also say that with the law enforcement in my community, both my city and my county police and sheriff departments, respectively, have been doing a fantastic job of constitutional policing overall. So I really don't have beef with them. If that changed, then my attitude would change. I reject that. I don't like that they are. For how California's concealed carry system works, I completely reject that the concealed carry system, where law enforcement gets to decide if you get to carry or not. Like there's a lot of aspects of the system I don't like, but also there's good and bad counties for that. There's some counties where you effectively have to pay off a sheriff in order to get your concealed carry permit, and of course you can't really open carry in California really at all. So you could try to avoid living in those counties, but good luck if your family's there, right? The other side is counties like mine, where generally the sheriff is going to try to make sure you're not crazy. And from what I hear, I haven't gone through with the process yet because I might be moving a little bit closer to you pretty soon here. I might actually be doing that in the next 6 months. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm not opposed to law enforcement as long as they're serving the interests of the people. They're policing constitutionally. They'll have an ally with me. I guess my thing, and what I wish we could kind of go back to is why can't we say I support good cops and have that be something that all sides of this issue agree with? We support cops that enforce constitutional laws. We support cops that police responsibly and ethically in their communities. We don't support cops that hide bad behavior, that don't report bad behavior, that use excessive force. Like why can't we just say that this is all, there's aspects the police serve a valuable service, and also they have a high moral burden of what's okay and what's not okay for them to do, and it's a high standard, and it's okay that we hold them to a high standard. Like why can't we say all of that? And I guess that's where I kind of get hung up in this, because the conversation starts going in circles a lot.
Yeah, I guess there's nothing to disagree with. The overall, if you look at the state of things back in the decade, there's been horrible abuse all throughout time, and then there's been awareness and then eventual change. So it's if you want to take a snapshot now and say it's the worst that it's ever been, I don't think that's correct. If you want to take a snapshot now and say it's not perfect, okay, that's true. But there's got to be, you got to look at this with some sort of a perspective, or with some sort of in some sort of relationship with the rest of time. So overall, when there's abuses, they're figured out, and new policing styles are evolved. And I guess it's possible there's cops out there that want to just stay being crazy thugs and like their own gang, basically, doing whatever they want and leaving themselves free to, be above the law or what. Obviously, if there's a bunch of them like that, they probably do want to be like that, but nobody else wants them to be like that. Nobody's that's them hiding in the bureaucracy. So, you change the bureaucracy so that they can't. And I don't know, it's easy to play whatever we're doing here, right? 2020 hindsight or whatever. But, if you make it more like sheriffs, where they're elected and less appointed, and, we've got, to suggest there's less and less transparency, I guess. I don't know. I'm no expert on it, but it seems as though we've got more transparency than ever before. It's got to be more and more difficult for a bad cop or a bad department to hide.
Yeah, and I don't have an issue with making it harder and harder over time. And one of the debates that I've had with a couple of friends that were proximal, a little more proximal to law enforcement than me, especially getting out of the service, where they were like assisting with either security tasks for the police in a private capacity or what have you. One of the biggest concerns was, oh, well, if you look at a lot of these reforms people are asking for, police departments do them already. And it's like, yeah, they do. If you look at, say, 8 Can't Wait, that was a viral campaign that was just focused on, hey, drive these into your police department. So I took those to my local police department and I said, hey, what's going on with these? And I got a whole bunch of other people to do it with me and just say, hey, look, Roseville PD, we love you. We think you're great. We want to know what's happening to make sure that we don't ever have a George Floyd in our neighborhood. We want to know what happens so that we never have that scenario get repeated here, and that you're always above par and above board, and just we can trust you. What are you doing to improve? And that was the attitude of the conversation. Give it like a week. They banned chokeholds. They also very clearly outlined all of the different measures and everything. And it was like, yeah, they found one thing that they could have done on the list that they weren't doing. They had one thing on the list, which was a use of force continuum. And I forget the specifics of their system, but they say that they've abandoned that in favor of a more kind of dynamic model. So they have something that's kind of an evolution of a force continuum in place that's a bit better training for their officers. That's their position on it. So it's like, okay, cool. Like, but we talked to you and you listened to us. Like, that's the relationship I want with the police. And as long as we can maintain that civil relationship where it's like, hey, this is how we would like to be police, and the police say, yeah, okay, cool, this is how we can meet you there. Like, as long as that dialogue's open, we're in a way better place than the alternative. Right. So it's like, that's what I want. That's all I'm shooting for. That's great to me.
I mean, that's the way it should be, for sure. I don't know if it's not possible or if people just didn't even try that way. Now, you're saying you gave them a list of like that you came up with, or like a list of stuff that's sort of common sense, or a list that's going around, or
Yeah, it was a list going around. I forget the name of the organization that put it out. And it's an organization that's known for being critical of police. So take that with the grain of salt that it is. But the 8, it's called 8 Can't Wait. It's a hashtag 8, like the number 8 can't wait. And then basically what they did was they walked through a series of 8 different police reforms. So talking like, hey, look, most departments don't have all 8 of these measures, but if you do, the lethality of police encounters drops substantially. So I think it drops something like 76% or 75%, somewhere around there. So it's like, why don't you have all 8? Right? Is the question. Because most departments around the nation would have 2 or 3 on the books that they were able to tell the public about. So use of force continuum, having some kind of training for escalation, de-escalation, having training for not shooting at moving vehicles except in very extreme circumstances, not using chokeholds, just understanding what other tools and stuff were available. And you could go through this list. They basically just had 8, and then go through. And if you implement the 8, then you see massive reductions. Now, Roseville PD had, I think, like 6 out of 8, and in a sense, like 7 out of 8. And then with chokeholds, they were before they hit that before Trump put out that he didn't want chokeholds anymore. So they were actually ahead of the curve on that. So still an activist victory. Like, it's still really cool to be able to see that we have that relationship with our local police department. They have only one thing that I'm still a little upset about. They deleted a Facebook post where they they busted a motorcade during COVID, like quarantine, so no one's allowed out. There was a kid having a birthday, and so some guys came through, I guess, in like classic cars or something like that. They're all souped up and possibly breaking some California laws regarding like what types of accessories and things with your engines and with the vehicles themselves, just like street racing modification laws or whatever, or noise laws or something. So the police bust this parade that was going by a kid's house, cite people, and then proceed to do a parade down the same neighborhood. That's my understanding of the facts. And then they bragged about that on Facebook. So it's like, hey, we busted these adults who were giving a kid a birthday party that was using vehicles that we didn't care for, and then proceeded to commit literally the same crime, except for we're cops, so it's not a crime. So look at how good we are. And I was like, come on, guys. Like, and then you deleted the post to hide that. So it's like, this is petty of me. It's a very minor First Amendment issue, but that's about the only bone I have to pick with my police department at the moment. So I consider it a pretty good relationship if there's only one major complaint from me. And that's how I try to approach things. Like, you're not going to like 100% of what anybody does, but if you only dislike a couple of things, you're probably getting along fairly well, right? I mean,
yeah. And I guess it depends on the size of the department and their stress level, or like what level they're at. If they're comfortable at their level, or if they're stressed and not able to police at the level they want.
Yeah, and we just had a shooting, actually, same block as me too, just a couple days ago. And that was interesting. The police were very quick to respond to that. They always are. Um, I was involved in like an altercation in my the parking lot where I live, my apartment complex, a while ago. It wasn't quite an altercation, but it could have turned into one. And they were very, very quick to respond to that. I thought my car was getting broken into. I was responding to that. I had my wife call. So it's like they've been really responsive and really great overall. And with that shooting and everything, um, very quick too, and very quick on like social media and everything, getting the word out on Facebook and Twitter. Hey, community, this is what we're looking for. Areas safe, areas not safe, and just coordinating that with us. They've been doing a phenomenal job of that. And the other thing too is that after that shooting happened, my wife was like, you know what? I'm very happy that you're pro Second Amendment right now, because this crazy is on the loose. But we're well armed in here, so I feel safer. I'm like, yeah, that's the point. The point is to be safer. So it's good. And we just kind of listened to the police scanner and kept an eye on social, and listened for any more loud noises or anything crazy outside. But it was interesting to have it happen so close, and then be like, you know what, yeah, no, we're ready, we're good. I just feel confident. But that's the power of the Second Amendment, to bring it back to what we all love. But yeah.
Well, we got a bunch of people out there. Nobody's really saying much anymore. Wielden Alarm said the Democrats have seen their party taken over by the left. The anti-gunners argument doesn't work with the defund the police. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess, first off, I'm going to keep throwing out there that all we've seen is the number of NICS checks. And every time they bring a new state on board with universal background checks, and until you can tell me how many states have universal background checks, I'd have to go look at one of my notes. But it's not a small number of states in my mind. There's too many states have universal background checks. And that means that every time a guy said to his 4 daughters, go come grab a shotgun, they had to go to a thing and fill out 4 4473s. So that alone is not an indication of how many new gun owners there are. That's just an indication of how many guns got distributed around. We need to see the numbers from NSSF. I mean, I'm not going to say it's going to be 50-50 or nothing, but there's just a chunk of that that's created by gun laws, and that's part of their overall strategy. And I knew it when they started doing universal background checks, is that they're going to allow, or they're going to incorporate, same way they do with suicides, they're going to incorporate all of those transfers as if every time something happens, gun owners are paranoid and quick to buy more guns. And this time it's fairly obvious. Obviously, this time is unique. This time there are now new gun owners, and the empty stores are an indication that guns did get sold. I'm not denying that guns got sold. I just want to keep throwing out there that their efforts, the gun prohibition, its efforts are a portion of that.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things to note is, right, like how much everything right now is confirming the pro 2A narrative, right? So to Wielden and Well Arm's point, right, you get to choose. You get to choose between you are in control of your security or the police are. That is the discussion right now. Do you trust the police? If your answer is no, then thoroughly clear there. You have to be in charge of your own security. And we have some great tools for you. They're kind of expensive right now because everyone is seeing the light right now. My FFL here was selling a Glock for a new Glock 19 for $900 almost. I think it was in the window for $899. So that's the kind of price.
Normally they're not anywhere near.
Right. Like normally what a Glock 19 you pick up like Bud's Gun Shop or whatever, like 450 to 500 tops, like 550 maybe with retail markup. So almost double the price for a new Glock 19. I've seen them listed online with like Gunbroker and stuff like that, like 700 right now for Glock 19s. And it's like, okay, they're listing like $300 over the price. That's how many people are coming over. That's the scarcity applied to the market here. But guess what? Like, people are seeing the distinction. Either you're going to be responsible for your security or the police are. And if you can't trust the police to make it in time, to behave themselves, whatever, like we can agree or disagree on if the police are good or bad and in what context and what should change and what shouldn't. But It's like, guess what? You know, you got to pick a side, and only one side is going to come for you. Like, to put it
Well,
frankly,
everybody can agree that there are
yeah.
only X number of police, and if something happens that requires X times 2 or X times 3, then you know you got some kind of lottery draw on whether or not you're actually going to get a police when needed. So even if you're, you know, not against anything, or you're not even apprehensive about police, if you're 100% pro police, you got to acknowledge that they're just not able to cover everything in a worst case situations.
Well, and also, you know, like, I would also say, again, not a lawyer, but remember the court precedents here. The police do not give two shits about you if you die. They do not care, right? They have no obligation to protect you if it involves putting their lives at stake, and that's been affirmed by courts. So the obligation of a police officer is to do their job, to execute their duties, to not be malfeasant. But that the serve and protect thing is a tagline. It is not the mission, right? So there's understanding that distinction, understanding also that a lot of cops are good people. Most of them, I would say most cops are more than willing to put themselves in harm's way to go save someone's life. So while there's not a legal requirement there, they still have a sense of duty and respect. And I don't want to generalize and say all cops are no cops, but as far as that's concerned, it's that. So yeah, so you know, again, fundamentally those two options: you take control of your security, or you let them handle it for you. One thing I do find really interesting, to Clint's point, all the Democrats who are particularly hung up on this, or at least a lot of these Democrats that are particularly hung up on this, and I'm talking more the liberal elite than the genuine like intellectual left. I want to segment those two groups because corporate Democrats are very similar to Republicans in a lot of ways, versus like the left is talking like Marxist theory and stuff like that. Like they're very far left. With those people tend to be very well armed. Just they don't carry them. They have armed guards, right? They have bodyguards. They have hired state security. Um, right? They have Secret Service guys with them. They have police everywhere that they go. They're well armed. They're just too lazy to do it themselves, unless they are, you know, unless they get that concealed carry permit through, right? Theirs gets approved, right? But yours gets denied. So it's like these people don't believe their own bullshit, frankly, for the most part. The principled objections are few and far between, and that's why I'm trying to to be on the hunt for those, the people that do genuinely believe differently. But what we see is it's okay if I have men around me to protect me with guns, and it's okay if I'm in a safe neighborhood where everything's nice and fine. I don't need a gun then. But like, why do you think people are buying guns now when crime is on the rise, when there's civil unrest? Why do you think people are buying guns in places where they're not as privileged as you, like where they don't have as nice things as you? It's because they don't have the level of security that you have. So, like, you know, that liberal that I shouldn't say, I don't even like calling the Democrats liberal because reasons, but that Democrat talking point of you're safe, you don't need a gun, is just garbage. Like they don't, because they're protected, they're behind a wall of safety for the most part. Everybody else in the streets that's struggling, they need a gun. So
Now, I mean, you're not saying that all Democrats are somehow, whatever, wealthy enough to have gated communities or security. I mean, there's a shit ton of Democrats that are poor as me, probably.
mhm. I'm talking like I'm talking that liberal elite, quote unquote, I think is probably the best way to convey that. So like if you had to envision Pelosi or Harris or any of them, right? They have all the armed guards in the world. They'll brag about their concealed carry, you know, little 38 that they've got with them, whatever. They'll do that type of stuff. But push comes to shove, they'll take it away from you given the opportunity. They specifically want to be armed, but they don't want you armed. And also, and I don't know if you heard about this, but I forget the number of the bill. I'd have to look at it. But did you see that they're looking at coming after level 4 body armor? Anything over like 3+?
Again, not the specifics, but in general, I've seen rumors or whatever on the internet, or I mean on Instagram. So I'm not sure. I have not had the ability to really get my head in the game and follow anything. So I'm just barely aware. But yeah, that's. I mean, that's not new. That's another effort towards it. They've done it before, and it's already to if it, anyway, it's already got some issues, but now they're talking about making it illegal to own.
Yeah, and I only have one question with that, right? Which is, okay, I can get that. I can understand cognitively the argument that guns are dangerous, and so they present this danger to the public because they're dangerous, and so you shouldn't be able to have one because of that danger. It's like, okay, I can understand that, where they're coming from, at least with that argument. That feels intuitive enough for someone to arrive at, honestly. Where you lose me is, okay, so I don't get to have a gun, but not only do I not get to have a gun, I don't get to wear armor that doesn't hurt anyone, that only protects me. Because if I have that armor, I'm harder for the state to kill because they still get the armor. The state can still have whatever armor they want, but I would not be allowed to have said armor. So I can only feel like there's one reason the state would not want me to have body armor. Like, and I don't feel optimistic about that one. To which my response is, that's fine. The state has plenty of body armor. I'll borrow theirs when they're done using it. If it came to that, but right.
But they're probably not worried about regular people defending themselves. They're suggesting that body armor makes a criminal invincible because they've got unrealistic expectations of what body armor can even do. And then, I don't know, they got scared. They watched somebody commit a crime with body armor. It's almost always what it is. So instead of being satisfied that there's felony level charges applied with minimum sentencing when you wear armor while committing a felony with armor on, they're not satisfied with that. They want to take it to the next level. But yeah, I don't think it's paranoid to suggest that that's to state it the way you stated, because that's not false. If they're not satisfied with the extra punishment for being a criminal with body armor, then why do they need to take it? If it's just theater, if it's just because they know that it's a thing they can do, then shame on them for just doing nothing, for just wasting everybody's time. There should be consequences to unnecessary or infringing bureaucracy, perhaps. But I hear you. You're probably going to get people say, "Oh, you're just paranoid that the state's out to get everybody."
Yes. Unapologetically, yes.
Yeah.
I don't believe that the state has my best interest at heart. I believe that I have my best interest at heart. I believe that the state doesn't have your best interest at heart either. I think that there's people who try to who try to do what they think is right. I don't I don't dispute that there's some honest politicians, right? Like, I think we can all agree there's at least a few politicians out there who do things at least some of the time in a genuine manner for what they genuinely believe is right. I don't have an issue with that. I'm just arguing that they are not concerned with my interests necessarily, that I am not first in their mind. They are not thinking of me when they rest their heads on their pillow at night, the same way that my wife would, the same way that, like that anybody, other than me and my family would, right? I think about my family when I go to bed. I don't trust that the government does the same thing. I don't think Gavin Newsom lays his head on his pillow and goes, man, I really wonder if California is going to be safer tomorrow because of all of my coronavirus stuff that I'm doing and all these wineries that I'm closing down. I wonder if they'll really appreciate it tomorrow. Like, I don't think that he does that. I don't think that he cares about me, right? And it would be very difficult to convince me that a politician cares about me. Very difficult. I did actually email a senator, Jim Nielsen, on AB 88. That was for the Franklin Armory Title I out here in California. That now seems to be stalled out. That was basically a workaround for assault weapon laws, so that we could get a normal AR, basically. With that said, he gave me an actual email that was written back and looked like it was actually written by him and not just some like auto-generated thing. So there is some exception where there are good politicians where if you do work with them and stuff, they will contact you and they'll work with you. But like I said, I don't trust the state at all. I don't trust the state at all. The state, can I show you? I'm going to show you.
Sure. While you're getting that. It's all about scale too. If you've got a person who represents, the housing area, so it's dozens of people, you're going to have a certain relationship. You've got somebody that's working with the county, I guess. They're going to represent thousands of people, and they're going to have a different relationship as you scale up. Yeah, you can't expect the president to be aware of and compassionate about the 360 million or whatever individual requirements each person has, because as you get up to the different levels, they're going to start getting into different levels of intricacy, right? So, hey, I mean, I hear you, but I don't require them to a politician. Same way I don't require, I don't know, maybe the head of shipping at the toothpaste factory to give a shit about, if my toothpaste tastes right. He's just there to make sure that the rest of the work gets done. The QA people make sure that it tastes right.
Yeah, and to that point, right? Like this is how they legislate for us. So just to direct your attention to this wonderful California compliant rifle here, I'm going to start with no muzzle device, right? I've got the thread protector on there because that flash hider would make me
permanent, or can it come off?
This can come off, but it has to require a tool. So I can't take it off by hand or anything. Like no matter how I try, it has to be able to come off with a tool. I would be allowed to use a compensator or a muzzle brake, but I cannot use a flash hider. So that's just one example of California's fun laws. And whatever, this is just like whatever budget setup I made, right? But this is my first one that I built though, so I don't feel too bad. But also my grip. This grip that you have to grab like so, right? So I'm trying to just you try to grab it. This is right. And so in actuality, it's not that bad. It feels pretty much like that, but they think that they think this, the muzzle device, and they think this grip right here, because it's not a pistol grip, now that this is impossible to be dangerous in the event of a mass shooting.
Right.
They think that because this grip is angled like this, that I can't, one hand, right, do whatever I've got to do with it.
But that isn't their, I mean, who knows what each individual is going to say is the position, but the general position is to make owning firearms less appealing, to make it more annoying or whatever, so that there's less firearms owners. That'll mean there's less shops and there's less, whatever movement position, for this side of the argument. And then they eventually win. So their goal isn't to solve a specific thing, even if they suggest it is, what the long-term goal is.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that it's out here in California, like take us as the warning. Take us as like you ever seen those the war movies of like ancient Roman stuff where the Romans or whoever, the barbarians or whoever they're fighting, right? Like they defeat that one outpost, and so they cut off everybody's heads and they just flop them over the catapult into the city to scare you. California, we are that decapitated head right now. That's how much we've lost, right? Like it's very difficult to do anything other than slow them down. So like we are making some progress on things like maybe we'll be able to get standard capacity magazines back. The Ninth Circuit seemed to be grilling the state on the restriction of magazines pretty heavily, because they're like, it seemed like, I'll put it this way, it seemed like the people in the Ninth Circuit that were looking at the magazine issue were aware of how firearms come in their normal configurations. It seemed like they were aware that like a 15 round mag or a 17 round mag or a 30 round mag can be totally standard for different firearms. And they were grilling the state on like, why is that not okay? Why is it 10 rounds? Why is 10 rounds an acceptable standard? Why not 2 rounds? Why not 7 rounds? Why not 100 rounds? Like, do you have answers to these questions? That was the kind of vein that they were asking. So I felt like they were pretty aware. So like, I'm optimistic on some things. But the other stuff, it's like, yeah, it sucks. Like the handgun roster is probably one of the other biggest nuisances out here, because if the manufacturer doesn't microstamp on the handgun and it's not submitted to the roster and all that, basically we can't do it. And microstamping is expensive. A lot of these companies don't want to do it. So if you're in California, unless you got very, very lucky, it's going to be nearly impossible to find like the next generation of Glock or whatever pistol. You're going to be stuck with a lot of like early 2000s type stuff, like Gen 3 Glocks, that type of stuff. which it works, but it's like, again, just annoying as all hell. And like you said, death by a thousand cuts. They're just going to make it like they want to keep kind of clinching the grip, making you kind of suffocate and suffocate, making it just more and more of an inconvenience till all that you have left are levers and revolvers and bolt guns. Like that's what they're shooting for.
Well, they want no handguns, but all right. So, and then part of it too is by making it less appealing here than it is there, and they get people that care to leave, and then they get people who stay that don't care, and then they get their way even more. But so California, 7 million gun owners, 40 something million residents, and it's pretty big physically, right? You got a lot of stuff going on in California, from coastline, ports, from the other side of from the whole Pacific, really. You've got an international border with Mexico. You've got resources out the yin yang. A lot of our food comes from California, and then you got Hollywood. You've got the Silicon Valley. So California is a big place. Now, you're not the only place that has horrible gun laws. Just you guys do everything, or everything you do, Oregon and Washington do. So they've got bad gun laws too. And then you've leached them out into Nevada already, almost. And then we've got New Jersey and New York, and everything over on the East Coast. And then there's a couple in between, but we've got a couple of things going for us. There's no more concealed carry prohibition anywhere. Even Illinois, the last state, has concealed carry. So concealed carry stuff in California is no longer the trend leading the way as it once was. Prohibition on carry, which was California's whole thing in the first place. That was their thing. Well, it worked.
They've got it, yeah.
But it went the other way. Now it's all 50 states are back to having carry again. And California's left standing there trying to defend why prohibiting carry is so good when you've got a lot of violence anyway. Here's the thing, though. No matter all of that stuff, I guess the big thing is, unlike New Jersey, or where I was going with that, is unlike New Jersey or some of the smaller states, you've got so much going on in California that it's real difficult for the politicians to hoodwink everybody or to blind somebody. You've got a lot of places you can go shooting. You've got people who've been shooting their whole lives in that state. Lots of reasons to own guns besides defense and stuff. So lots and lots of opportunity in California. But here's the thing. You've got a state that's bankrupt, right? You've been financial issues for a long time. Hollywood is anywhere near as big as it used to be. And whatever it's got, its power is losing to Netflix and to content creators that actually are cool. And then while Silicon Valley and stuff is still pretty big, I don't see them having a heck of a lot of, I guess they're anti-gun and they push their weight around, but they're just not Hollywood. They're not creating society. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe they are a little bit. But anyway, I'm just saying I could see California getting fed up with it and push the other way. And it might not be, I might be crazy because I don't keep up with it. I don't live there. But if it is just politicians and the people get sick of that kind of politician, all it would take is one politician who says, let's get an eraser out, and all your gun laws would be back to normal. Because it's not like you'd have half the state stand up and go, hell no. You'd have some people.
You might actually, because how our districts are set up. So you might actually run into that problem of, they basically, like, state laws, they go through. So like this, the AB 88, when they did that, the guy couldn't, the guy bringing it to the table and saying that the Title I from Franklin Armory is this super dangerous assault weapon that has to be banned, because I don't know why. Actually, I really don't know why. And you had Jim Nielsen, so, Placer County, so rep in my county, Senator Jim Nielsen goes, you want us in a budget bill to talk about, like, to ban something as a matter of policy, which I already disagree with, but then you don't even know why you need that. Like, you don't know why that is that you're banning it. And, like, the guy couldn't articulate it. And even after he failed to articulate it, and even after all that embarrassment, his own party laughed him out of the room because they're like, come on, dude, you have to at least know the reason for your bill. When he comes back, he gives his cursory little whatever. They voted in the dead of night to get it through. Like, these guys are, and the Democrats, like, if you were a Democrat, you just signed it. right? Because it's how they get the rest of their legislation through as well. They would rather see that you tack on something like that to bills about other spending that people need or other initiatives that are really good for the population or whatever, or that people find really popular and just well liked ideas. They'll tack on the anti-gun stuff into those. Meanwhile, also addressing 80%. So you have to background check for an 80% build for an AR. I don't know if you knew that, but that was also included on that. So they're going to be pushing up the date. It passed the Senate and then went back to the House of Representatives, I believe, and then got stalled in Assembly again. So they have to redefine terms, but they were going to start background checking for 80% lowers in 2025, and then they effectively said we're going to start doing that in 2020 or 2022, I believe. So talk about adding even more panic buying to guns, because now people are like, oh crap, they're coming for them. Newsom, we know that if Newsom gets this on his desk, he's signing it without a second thought because it's restrictive on firearms. We just know that that's what he does. Also, if I may, quick side note, I saw Quint's comment down there on sorry, it was who was it? Someone said that the laws were made by commies. Who said that the California laws were made by commies? There it was. Yeah. So, okay. So Quint, I disagree with you because, and only for one reason. So, and please don't get mad. The reason I disagree is that commies are all about the people seizing the means of production, and they need to be armed to do so. So like, if you're a Marxist, if you're a legit like communist, you would want to be armed. You would want like public armories and all that crazy stuff. So, so that's the only reason I disagree. Democrats are just as bad as Republicans in regards to handing out welfare to the people that don't need it. They do a really bad job of that. They take your money, my money, and they give it away to people who have no need for it, like where it doesn't even serve a practical use a lot of the time. They bail out corporations all the same. They just pretend to do it less than a lot of your kind of corporate Republicans who are big supporters of big business. That's like the difference. They pay lip service to the people, just like every other politician does, but they're like, I don't see much of a difference between Republicans and Democrats for the most part. There's very little separating them. In my book, and especially on the Second Amendment, both can be just as bad. You can have Democrats that are in very Second Amendment or pro Second Amendment areas where they stay out of the way of the Second Amendment because they know it could hurt their chances of reelection. You also have, Republicans like we had a Republican who was in my county, and he said, "Oh, I voted down 4 out of 5 gun legislation bills while I was, in office." And it's like, well, 4 out of 5 isn't good enough, bud. I need you to vote 5 out of 5, right? So there's different levels of FUD that I see, but anyway, I just wanted to make that point. But yes, California is a meme for a reason.
Barbecue is saying that they did 80% lower background checks in Pennsylvania.
I'm not going to tell anyone to break the law. I would just make the argument that unjust laws are no laws at all, and I would leave it there. I would also say that in my case, I'm going to be moving to another state, and I intend to, I'll be likely moving to Arizona here fairly soon for school, because that's where my school is. So when I do that, I will likely be purchasing a lot of stuff in Arizona, and then we will be figuring out the legalities of bringing it back to California to make sure that any firearms are as compliant as they need to be, I guess you could say. That's how I'd put it. I don't comment on compliance other than I say, you do you. That's my attitude on compliance. I will never show a weapon on YouTube or anything like that. Any weapon system, any rifle, pistol, anything that is not compliant. All the firearms that California knows that I have, they will know that they are all compliant at all times. I'll put it that way.
All right. Well, so we've been going for an hour or so, and I don't know. We've just been now chatting about California a bit. Started out though. Where did we start out?
I think we started on more on the that communication conversation that we've always been having, which I like, by the way. I think it's a great conversation.
Yeah, well, I guess it was, yeah, you've got a video that you posted with what was that, an interview, or were you just talking about the concept of Hold My Gun?
Yeah, I was just talking about all those ideas and solutions, and then Hold My Guns, because I did wind up talking to Sarah over there for like an hour. We had a really good conversation, and that was thanks to you guys here. So thank you in the chat, and thank you, G, for letting me know about that, because it wound up actually being super, super informative. Like, one of the things about Hold My Guns actually that I learned when I talked with Sarah was that one of the utilities that they have is not just for if you're feeling like you can't have the firearm in the house because you might be a risk to yourself, and so you just want to remove it just to be safe. Just like if you were like, hey mom, hey dad, hey friend, can you hold on to my rifle for a little bit, just because like I need to get my head right and then I need to go pick it up. So it'd be like that. Just you could do that at a gun store now. That's all that she's trying to do on that front. The other side of what she has though is, let's say that you're in a state that requires licensing and your license expires for that firearm. Let's say that you have a prohibited person enter the house, and that could compromise your right to own a firearm. If you got caught with that firearm and a prohibited person, you could be facing all kinds of legal penalties and stuff. Different states have different laws, right? So having someone hold on to your firearms in those cases as well can just be broadly useful. So even if you don't use it for the mental health utility, some of those states, you might actually have a good shot at being able to use that service to avoid compliance issues, but still own your firearm. So that could be a useful thing for a lot of people. So I just want to put that out there as well. It's not just about mental health.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, you could have the people, what was it say, like relatives come over and they got that, some kid that you don't want to have the guns in the house for.
Yeah, and like, if let's say your safe got broken into or something, like, you can make up hypotheticals, right? Your safe gets broken into one day, or it breaks and you just don't have a safe place to store them. So you want to leverage a gun store to do so, or leverage their network to do so. That's part of it too. So like, hey, it might just be a security thing. And part of the benefit of being able to do it at a gun store is the insurance aspect. So typically if you're using like a consignment mechanic at a gun store, right, your firearm's going to be protected by business insurance or whatever in particular insurance they have. It's locked up in their locks, their safes, their vaults, whatever. It's like generally pretty safe places to keep something stored. They have to be able to leave those places overnight, right? Sometimes they have armed security, when people are in there, it's always armed security, right? So there's a lot of benefit and a lot of utility to it broadly. So even if it's not the mental health solution for you, just keep them in the back of your head if you ever have a compliance issue, for sure.
So much people have been jumping in. Patriots out there.
I can see if my wife will let me run another 45 here, or another 15 at least, for sure. So I planned this one out. I told her I was watching tonight. That I would jump in. Oh man.
All right, so I have a project going that I got to work on, and I don't know what else to chat about. Oh, I guess I go look at the calendar. Not had a chance to work on the calendar much this month, which is frustrating. But let's see, today is the 8th, technically.
Yes.
So tomorrow will be the 9th. We got Illinois getting their CCW tomorrow. We were
cool.
kind of talking about that earlier. It was in 2013. So think about that. That's been 7 years already that we've had. Every single state has constitutional carry. We can't take that for granted. That was a lot of hard work, and we just act like it's no big deal now. So, there's most of my life, it was a pipe dream to think of Illinois offering a concealed carry license, like being able to legally carry a gun in Illinois. I'm old. In my entire life up until 2013, that was, well, actually till 2012, basically. They almost got it through, and everybody kind of figured they'd keep pushing. So again, that was unheard of in 2010 even. So, California is dire, but, things change. We have a system that allows things to work or to change. So anyway, tomorrow, Carl Walther, it's the anniversary of his passing. Somebody had just posted an interesting little sub gun from Walther over on Instagram earlier. But let's see, we missed a couple of things yesterday that were good. Well, not good, but they were important. One is semi-automatic rifle import ban of 89. Bush stopped importation of semi-automatics. So that's where goodbye SKSs and FALs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, American made AKs only from then on, right? Pretty much, you could buy what was in.
No, because that was 89. You could still get AKs and stuff. The semi-automatic import ban stopped from certain countries. So we could get AKs. The AKs from like Finland and stuff didn't even come in until, I'm going to try to think now. Actually, they've been coming in. So anyway, yeah, we could get them from non-Soviet sources and stuff. But we could still get them after 89. We got them all the way up and through, the assault weapons ban or whatever. 94 really stopped them. But it didn't even stop them. It just turned them into little neutered things.
Which, not to completely derail, but on the note of AKs, I saw that you got that book that was off of eBay. It was like that reprint of whatever old like translation from whatever Russian, I guess, or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw my comment on that yet, but it looks like the editor or the author or translator or whoever this what is it, Wyatt Lamont. It looked like that name came up in a Ninth Circuit case regarding like weapons trafficking, which was like very interesting to me. So I'm wondering if it's the same guy. It was God, what was it? It was like I'm gonna see if I can. Cadmus Industries, I think, was his employer, and then I guess Cadmus Industries was a firearms manufacturer back in the day. And all I can find are a few like old ads. I can't find anything about like the company's history or anything anywhere. And I was wondering, maybe you had some insight on that, but I was wondering if maybe this is the same guy that participated in editing that book that also got busted on. I don't know if this is like an NFA charge or if this is some other kind of weapons charge, but I thought it would be
sometimes those are legit. I mean, I don't know. So the specifics of this particular guy, I don't know. But those kinds of things that you're describing, I've seen things where I've literally been in a gun shop where they're having an audit, and the guy would come out and go, "Oh, look, they use the ILL abbreviation for Illinois instead of capital I, capital L." And, I'm supposed to dinky on this, that kind of shit. So sometimes there's situations like that where, okay, now you're accused of, trafficking something, blah, 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 because you had your forms filled out wrong, and we're taking it to the max. Or they're unscrupulous and they were doing something wrong. I really don't know.
And it looked like from this case, just to give you that background, because again, I haven't fully read up on all these laws. Like, I don't know what everything about everything is about, especially like historically. I can't say what the time frames were, but I know it was around 1971 or so when the appellate court heard this. So definitely well older than me. And then what I can also say is that the appellate looked at the fact that the guns were being stored in this guy's house. That was one of the things that came up. So it looks like to me that his house was not licensed as part of the Cadmus or what have you. I think it's Cadmus Industries. So he wasn't licensed to be operating out of there. He had automatic weapons in his house. Because of that, he got cited for whatever trafficking or whatever violations. So then he went through the whole appeal process trying to get that thrown out, and it didn't work. At any rate, I thought it was interesting.
I don't know that, but it would be cool to look into that or whatever and ask around. But from the book side, so I have I don't know if I have, it's hard to say because not too many people are bragging about their AK book collections out there, but I'm pretty sure I got a pretty complete AK or Kalashnikov book collection. And I don't have too many manuals because that's a whole nother thing to try to collect manuals because there's a lot of guns, right? each gun technically has its own manual, and then reprints in different countries. That's a lot of manuals. So anyway, books printed about the gun though, and then in this case, that one you're talking about is basically it is a translation of a manual from I don't even remember now off the top of my head, like something like 1970s though, like a long time ago. So it's one of the first like books that we had over here in the West about the AK, and it's been republished several times. And I bought it because the reprints have a thing on the cover that I'm used to seeing, and I didn't see it. So I was like, oh snap, that's an old one. And the guy was selling it for, cheap. So I was like, oh snap, he doesn't even know he has an old one. And I bought it before I realized there's an email address on it. And I'm like, dang it. So, I ended up buying a reprint. So whatever, that book's been around since the 70s. It's like there's a million reprints of it. I don't really care that I got a new reprint of it, honestly. But just because I got a library, I'm trying to collect a shit ton of collection. But those original ones from like the 70s, yeah, like that's the kind of thing that totally, if the guy's bringing them over and everything's written in whatever China or Russian or something, and he's trying to sell them to people that read English, he may have just done that as part of the whole trying to sell a bunch of guns. So it could make sense that it could be the same guy.
Yeah, and I looked
10 years shifted or something too. I don't remember the dates on everything. So, he might have done one first and then the other or something.
And it did look like that name is connected to, so this Wyatt Lamont guy is connected to a whole bunch of other books. When I did a little bit of research on the author, because I saw it and I was like, just reminded me of a whole bunch of like, my dad took me through my family tree recently, and it was really cool to see like just a lot of the connections. Like we had family ties that were Quakers out in Pennsylvania, most likely tied to like abolition, like Underground Railroad stuff. That's pretty like crazy intense. Like they had a secret room hidden behind a cupboard in a cabin like right on the Pennsylvania border. So like Underground Railroad stuff, like totally. So it's like it's cool to just kind of go through history and learn some of those things, even if some of them are more recent. So anyway, when I saw you open up that book, I was like, yeah, that does look really old school. I'm wondering what happened. So I just started, just doing a little Googling, and I just found some interesting facts that I'd share. But
no, it's not like a good one. Like it's not well done. So I get the impression that it's probably more of they didn't pay attention than they were trying to screw people into thinking it's old. But they succeeded in making me think it was old. But I can't imagine how many people are out there looking for that old book. There's probably not too many.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, because like who's looking for it, and then who's gonna find a book that's small, right? That's just laying around and be like, oh yeah, let me sell this. It's like, probably pretty scarce, and probably not. Like I don't know what the resale value of that book would be. Like I have no idea. I don't even know how to.
Well, you just go to Google, or eBay, sold or whatever, and it'll tell you, what they sold for. But it just depends on if someone needs an old one, but it can't be worth $25. I can't even imagine it's more than that.
Yeah, and that's the $1 million question is, like, what is it, what is the real book worth, I guess.
And it's a $15 book that might have $10 worth, might be worth $10 more to have the original. But I think more people would say, I'd rather have the new one, and the old one is worth less to me. That's what I think more people.
Yeah, and that's where like I haven't gone too much into curios like that. I only have like one really old, and I shouldn't say it's crazy old, but I do have I think it's called a Type 95 katana from World War II surplus that found its way into North Korea somehow during that conflict that my grandpa took off of the battlefield as a pickup. My grandpa was chosen frozen. And so that's like the one antique that I own. But like, and that one's cool, but like, I don't know. And I have matching serial numbers for like the hilt and the sword, for the sword itself, and then also the scabbard, which is cool. And I think that puts the resale at like around like 600 to like 900 or something like that. I'm not totally sure, but like that's staying in the family. That's a war trophy. It's totally staying in the family. But yeah, I don't know about like, I have not been in that level of the collector scene. So I have no idea what I'm looking at.
And then let's see. Then we kind of started off talking about semi-automatic import ban in '89, and then for some reason I just have it in here All right, so that's everything from the calendar then. Boom, boom. So anyway, I don't know. We've got lots of opportunity. There's lots of change coming, and we certainly aren't in the worst case scenario that there could ever be. And I was, like I say, kind of ill here, and just thinking about, we got a lot of stuff here compared to being cavemen or something like that. So, oh, you're muted.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say we just got to keep fighting the fight. That's what it comes down to. Although I will say, I am now getting a text from my wife that the baby is angry, so I might have to take off here. But I do appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in, and we'll chat again anytime.
For sure, thanks, man.
You bet. This is all about having an opportunity to chat in the evenings. I noticed I was going to, well, when it jumped in tonight, I was going to work on, I guess, a schedule, or what would you call it? I guess we call it schedule of the different podcasts that are going. I noticed there's going to be a new one starting on Sundays from a couple on Instagram that I think I met them at I didn't meet them. I didn't go up and shake hands with them or nothing, but I noticed that they were there. That's when I seen them kind of come onto the scene at the rally in November last year. Anyway, it's a couple, and it's a dude that was into guns, and he got into gun rights, and then his wife got into it. So they're starting a podcast on Sundays. So that seems pretty interesting, and that made me think that, well, it's really been a while since I went through and tried to, I guess, what do you call that? A schedule or a timeline? I don't know what to call it, but a list of all the different podcasts. I had one set up for the Shooter's Almanac that I put together last year, but a lot of people quit doing their podcasts, and like I say, there are some new ones. So maybe I'll do that tomorrow night. And otherwise, yeah, thanks, Paul, for jumping in. And nobody's really been saying much, but there's been a lot of participation tonight, and that's what it's all about. So right now we just have a few people watching. It swelled up earlier when we were chatting about more stuff. So thanks again for showing up, and we'll be back to pick you up later.
All right, take it easy, man.